Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Hope you're all doing sweet. It's finally here, the comparison between the Moza Aircross 2 and the Weebill S. I've promised this for... Speaking of that comparison, I'll be comparing the Weebill S to the Aircross 2 very soon. Very soon, very soon, very soon, very soon, very soon. So yeah, basically it's just been too long, and there's definitely been some new gimbals come out since then, most recently the Crane 2S. But I do think these two gimbals still represent the value proposition in terms of price to performance. So I did have the Ronin SC in the last video, but it didn't really have that strength to hold the camera and lens combinations that I needed. So I've taken it out of this comparison. But if you do want to see what I thought of it, check out my other comparison, which I'll link below in the description, which was the Ronin SC, the Weebill Lab, and the Moza Aircross 2. Now, I'm not a gimbal scientist. I'm not going to be looking into every single nook and cranny, but I've been using these two gimbals for quite a while now, so I know them sort of inside and out, and I want to give my opinion and comparison on these. I'm going to do it using 4 categories. The first is going to be design and build. That's going to be worth 5 points. The next is going to be features, and that's going to be worth 10 points. The next is going to be usability, worth 15 points. And the final one is stability, and that's worth 20 points, because that is obviously the most important thing when it comes to gimbals. Now let's address the elephant in the room here. I've lost the legs to the Moza Aircross 2, and that's why I'm using this weird Joby setup. But that actually wasn't much of a loss. One of the things I did complain about in the last video was the legs that actually come with this, the little tripod legs. They're just a little bit flimsy. If you squeeze them, it sort of pinches your skin in the middle. It wasn't the best. It was definitely an improvement from the original Moza Aircross, but it definitely wasn't the best by any means. So that was one of the negatives here. The whole thing feels really a little bit plasticky to me. It's a little bit cheapy, feels a bit hollow, but the reason I think they've done this is to put most of the material up here, where it matters in the motors. So I think where they've made the top quite heavy, because it can hold quite heavy setups, they've had to sort of sacrifice some of the quality down here, make it lighter to make the whole gimbal lighter. That is obviously a trade-off they made, but I don't think the quality is that great on the handle. The handle on this is also quite thick, and it can get uncomfortable during long shoots. It's not really that ergonomic. Something about it, I can handle the Weebill S, Weebill Lab, and my old sort of Crane Plus for pretty much the whole wedding day. But after filming a wedding day with this, my hands just feel a bit odd, and I don't know, the handle's just not great and not that comfortable, to be honest. Obviously you've got the light on it, which is okay. I mean, if you're into the RGB light stuff, I pretty much have it turned off all the time. I think it's a little bit weird, but the light is there, and it's, you know, a unique feature. So you've also got the analog stick on the front, which I think is much better than the Weebill S analog stick. You can move it in like finer increments, which just makes those smooth movements easier. So the Moza Aircross 2 for me gets a 4 out of 5 in design and build. Oh, I really should have got some tripod legs to this thing. Now onto the Weebill S, and starting with those legs. These legs, honestly. Okay, so let's start with the legs. I wasn't going to start with the legs, but they've just completely messed up. If you put them out and then shake it a little bit, the legs will go back in. Makes it impossible to put the gimbal down. But yeah, you don't really have the problem with the Weebill S legs here. If you fold them out, shake it a little bit, they don't move at all, and it makes it much easier just to put it down, which is quite nice. It is a little bit bigger than the original Weebill Lab, but obviously it holds more weight, so you'd expect it to be bigger. So that's absolutely fine by me. It is still a really, really small and lightweight travel gimbal. On the old Weebill Lab, I did complain about the tilt axis, which was adjusted using a little screw where this lever is here, and the screw would often pop off, or it just wouldn't tighten properly. And thankfully they've replaced it with a lever, which feels more premium and works a lot better. It does sometimes come a little bit loose, but not with the camera on it. Another thing I complained about on the Weebill Lab was the weird lever locks to lock the axes, which I really didn't like, because sometimes they would just lock mid-shooting and the gimbal would start going crazy. These thankfully have now been replaced with little switches, which is the same sort of thing you get on the Aircross 2. So yeah, really happy about that change. Obviously one of the things that the Weebill S has over the Aircross 2 is the underslung mode. So you just take the tripod legs off, attach it to the top, and you've got your underslung mode. Personally, I don't use that too much, but when I do use it, you do get really steady results, and it's just something, again, that is quite a good selling point of the Weebill S, and a reason why I really like it. So the Weebill S is probably my ideal build for a gimbal. It's small, it's lightweight, the construction quality is quite good, and you can obviously put it in the underslung mode for a bit of versatility. So for me, subjectively maybe, the Weebill S gets a 5 out of 5 on design and build. Now over to features, and the reason features is only worth 10 points is because most gimbals just have the same features these days. There's not really much separating them in terms of what they can actually do. In terms of these, the Moza Aircross 2 is now part of an ecosystem, so you can use the Moza slide pod with it to achieve some different results, which is quite a nice thing. The Aircross 2 also does portrait mode, so if you're wanting to film for Instagram or just generally film portrait videos, the Moza Aircross 2 can do that, whereas the Weebill S can't do it natively. Finally, there's automatic vortex mode on the Moza Aircross 2, when you can set the speed and the direction of the vortex, and it'll do it automatically without you having to move the analog stick. I don't really use this feature, but it is something, again, that the Weebill S can't do. The Weebill S actually has a lot more features once you get the transmission module. I've actually not had the transmission module, so I can't really comment on it, but it does unlock some more features like tracking using the actual camera and changing settings using your phone. So both of these get a 9 out of 10 for me in terms of features. The Weebill S does need some sort of portrait mode to get it in line with other gimbals these days, but the Aircross 2 probably needs more transmission style features. Now over to usability, which is worth 15 points for me, and the reason it's right up there at 15 points is because there's nothing worse than picking up a gimbal, trying to do a simple shot and it becoming a chore. So usability is a big thing. So one of the things about the Moza Aircross 2, and I did say this in the last video, is that you can change all of the settings in the screen using this wheel here. But I do also end up accidentally tapping the buttons on the wheel and end up changing the settings by accident. So this is just something to bear in mind. The Moza Aircross 2 is the easiest to balance out of the two. The twisty screws work really well, and actually it doesn't come out of its balanced state often, whereas the Weebill S can sometimes come a little bit loose. But what I will say is it's the hardest gimbal out of the two to actually control. So if you put it in certain positions, it'll vibrate when you think it probably shouldn't be vibrating in that position. And also, it still doesn't recenter automatically. So I've got it in a sort of slow to medium setting, and if you sort of pan too fast, it won't keep up and it will never actually recenter. So I do end up tapping the trigger button to recenter quite a lot. I thought this would be fixed in the firmware update, but unfortunately it hasn't, and it still makes this gimbal really kind of difficult to use in some circumstances. Having said that, this gimbal is really steady, which we'll see in the stability test, especially with a heavier setup. This can handle more than the Weebill S, which is a big part of its selling point. So the buttons on the Weebill S are probably one of the best parts about it. There's a dedicated POV button. I like to film in that POV mode for sort of dancing at the end of a wedding or something. There's also the switch that goes from pan follow to lock mode, which is really handy. And now, unlike the Weebill Lab, you can now change all the settings, including the speed, calibration and everything from the screen. So that is a big refreshment and something that was much needed as well. For me, the Weebill S is the easiest gimbal to use by far. It's just easy to balance, it's easy to get started with, and the settings are really, really simple. So this is just one of the best gimbals in terms of if you're going to buy a first gimbal and you just want to get started really quickly, this is probably one to go for. So the Moza Aircross 2 gets a 13 out of 15 in terms of usability. It's great to control everything through the screen. It's great that it's really easy to balance, but unfortunately it does still have those problems of not being able to center or catch up with really fast pan movements. So the Weebill S gets a 14 out of 15 in terms of usability. It's honestly the easiest gimbal just to pick up and use, and I think that's really important, especially in run and gun shoots. Now on to stability, which is worth 20 points because it's the most important thing of a gimbal. Just how stable does the footage look? A gimbal can have all the features, but if it's jittery, it is literally not even worth using. So obviously I've been using these on corporate and wedding shoots for quite a while, so I know what the stability is like on both of them. But to show you guys, I took them both to a park and filmed the same shots with both gimbals, so you can compare how stable they are. So I'm going to show you that footage first, and then I'll go through my thoughts. So what I did is go through each shot and rate them all out of 20, and then got the average for both gimbals. So the Weebill S came out at 18 points, and the Moza Aircross 2 came out at 17.2, so let's say 17 points. It's pretty similar to the last results with the Weebill Lab and the Moza Aircross 2. In general, these gimbals are both very stable. The fact that Aircross 2 is a bit heavier actually makes it better for walk-in shots, but it did struggle with tilt movements. There's a little jerk in that tilt shot, which I really didn't like. The Weebill S was light and nimble, making some of the shots a lot easier to film, but it did struggle with some pan movements, and while I was holding that trigger for the tilt, it did seem to bounce just a little. Overall, and the good news is these are both excellent gimbals. You'll be happy no matter which one you decide to purchase, and you'll be able to get good results from both. The Weebill S is great if you want to travel light and still get excellent stable footage, and it's worlds above the Weebill Lab in terms of quality. Its transmission features with the transmission module are obviously great, but even if you don't use any of these extra features, it is a really well-rounded gimbal, and definitely the favourite gimbal I've used so far. The Moza Aircross 2 might lack a bit of that polish and build quality, and it still suffers from that lack of centering, but honestly this gimbal makes up for it, and the fact that it can carry heavier setups, it's much easier to balance, and it does have that portrait mode, which can be useful. You can also probably balance a Blackmagic Pocket Cinema 6K on the Moza Aircross 2 without too many issues, and on a gimbal that size, it's worth all the trade-offs just to balance a heavier setup like that. That's it from me. Let me know what you think of these gimbals down below in the comments. If you enjoyed this video or it's been informative or entertaining in any way, please give it a thumbs up, and if you didn't enjoy it, give it a thumbs down twice. I've got some interesting videos coming up on Top Tip Tuesdays, as well as some exciting camera reviews just around the corner, hopefully. So if you want to see more like this, then do hit that subscribe button. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.